In 1973, as a teenager, I created an elven character for it was before Dungeons and Dragons. We were playing with miniature figurines in our own world, my world of Jural, and I had an army of elves, and I created an elven woman archer to join the elves from the elven forest of Langwall. Because of the way I do chronology, I said that every genuine chronological year is 10 years of Jural, unless something's actually happening. And I created the woman 54 years ago. So in her lifetime, that's 540 years. And she'd had a life before that, which means that, and this is an important bit, today is her 900th birthday. That needs some explaining as well. So what I'd say is, if a human lives 70 years, 70 years and 10, an elf lived 10 times that amount, so an elf lives to be 700. Now when a character gets to the end of life expectancy, sort of a human at 70, an elf at 700, I throw percentage dice, and you've got to get, at 70, 71 or more, and that means you get to be 80, unless something tragic happens, and it does, doesn't it? It's not a guarantee. So when I got to the elves' 700th birthday, I threw the percentage dice, I got 71, which means she could survive to 80, where I would have to test again, and I would have to get 81 or more. I got 87, which means I know she lives to be 90, 900 times 10, remember, and that's today. Now, I've got to throw now, she can't go beyond 100, because even if I throw a double zero on the tens dice and a zero on the other, I'm still only going to get to 100, 1,000 years old. So somewhere in the next part of her life, I know she's going to die. And I decided that because she's going to die, I didn't want that to be an anticlimax. So I've decided to end her life here in front of you now. In 77, 78, we moved away from our own fantasy worlds of Jural, and we introduced Dungeons and Dragons. And the first game I played, and the first game we played as a group, was the Tomb of Horrors. She was in the group, and she's one of the few survivors from the various attempts we made to get into that group. Now, her character sheet is the first character sheet I've created and still have. It's actually just a copy, really, of the sheet from the Tomb of Horrors. In the Tomb of Horrors, you have a look and it says, if you've got 4 players, you need these characters, and there's a list, and she's number 5 in the list, the elf. So her equipment and her spells and her characteristics and her various details are from the Tomb of Horrors, just copied straight by the original player, Simon. The players that controlled her changed over the years, but originally that's where we started. The only difference between the Tomb of Horrors character and her character on the sheet is the equipment list. And what we decided was that you could have 1 piece of equipment for every point of strength that you got from your character. And that's why the equipment list looks like it does. So eventually we moved her into looking like this figure. The sheet changed. When I played at school in 1982, she was the character of a young lady that was playing in the group, and she drew her to look like that. Over time, we got better figures, and she became this figure, and she had other character sheets. All of the time, I was keeping a record of her life, and that record of her life, after various rewrites, now looks like this. It goes on there. So I know, for example, I need to find my glasses, that she took part in the year 646 in the glacial rift of the frost giant Jarl, and later the village of Homlet, which are Dungeons and Dragons modules. She joined adventurers in 656. In 666, when she was 460 years old, which 46 as a human, she then joins the High Council of her father, who was the King of Langwall, and becomes an ambassador. And for many years then she serves as an ambassador. During the Great War, which lasts from 984 to 1069, which is the Free Peoples, I suppose in Dungeons and Dragons terms you'd call it the good versus evil, and they were the two sides. And it represents the sort of political arm of the elven collaboration within the Free Peoples. But because she's now quite venerable, she's 863 years old, which would make her 86 and a bit if she was a human. Her last formal act as an ambassador is to sign the peace treaty. She married. Her husband died during the Great War. She had a child, and it's all recorded, and she was part of a lot of the history of Jural. She was there, she was recognisable, she was an important person. I can imagine people looking at this and thinking, they are scrappy, crumpled bits of paper, the torn edges. You've kept them 50 odd years, what on earth are you thinking? Those old figures, sell them on eBay. But to me, they're not crumpled pieces of paper, they're the birth certificate of what's become a friend. And I'm genuinely about to say goodbye. She's going to leave the game. She has to. They're the rules. That's the end of her life. When you look at her character sheet, she has a lot of very good equipment. She has a magic sword. She has golden armour. But I've been thinking about the way to end her life. I was going to make a chart of the common ways that someone in their 90s, in the Middle Ages, might die of old age, disease or whatever. But then I thought, no, she deserves better than that. So here it is. The week of her 900th birthday in the forest of Langwall, great preparations have been made. The elves will have an amazing party to celebrate the sister of their king. One of the most noble, heroic elves who has ever trod the lands of Jural. She, however, seems more interested in speaking with a young cleric, a scribe, who spends all his time in her company, but will say nothing about what they discuss. The only evidence as to what they're doing is the ink upon his fingers. On the morning of her 900th birthday, 10th of July, 1106, at 4 in the morning, she wakes, all's quiet in the camp. She walks across the room to where the golden armour stands on a mannequin, beautifully portrayed and shining like the sun, to the black sword hung in a cabinet. She turns away, and from a dirty, battered old trunk, she takes out leather boots, moleskin trousers, a jerkin, a woolen coat. She puts on a cloak of green with a hood. She fastens it at the neck with a brooch of her mother's, clips a leather belt, and in a satchel at her belt she starts to add items. She taps her mother's brooch. The first, she says. The seal that her father gave her when she joined the Elven army. The second. A small dagger, the only reminder of a friend lost hundreds of years ago in the terrible search for the demi-lich Acererak. She pops it into her belt. The third. And so she goes on, adding an item for every 100 years of her life. Finally, she picks from the crate not the great magic sword, but the very first sword she ever owned. Still sharp, still clean, elven blade. And she puts it at the scabbard at her side. She takes her trusted longbow, her quiver of arrows. She makes her way down to the stable block, where the young scribe has ready for her an elven black stallion, saddled, bedroll. Nimble for somebody her age, she climbs to the saddle. No words. And she rides out towards the east. She rides towards the Tomb of Horrors. And that's the end. She's gone. Although I have a suspicion, perhaps in 50, 100 years, people might still be talking about her. Some might say she died under a greenwood tree, an old lady, an old elven woman, unable to match the rigours of the road. Some say she reached the Tomb of Horrors and was last known upon this world entering its desperate doom. But there are others. There are others who say, on a moonlit night, when the wind is just in the perfect direction, you will hear hoofs, and you might see, silhouetted against the moonlight, an elven female warrior, still riding, mounted upon a black horse, and still heading for adventure.